Good afternoon, everyone. I will call to order this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of Jasper for March 19th, 2024. It is 1:30 p.m. I welcome all of our viewers on web-based platform, councillors and administration around the table. We have no one in our gallery today. That could change. We're always happy to see people live in our gallery. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the agenda? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. If I could add an item under in camera 10.3 titled Strategic Communications.
Thank you for that. Are there any other suggested changes to the agenda? I will take it then as a motion from Councillor Hall to amend the agenda for today's meeting with the addition of agenda item 10.3, a matter involving strategic communications. Is there any debates? Call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And might I have a motion then from a councillor to approve the agenda for today's meeting as amended? Councillor Demota, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. As usual, we have 3 sets of minutes for approval today, beginning with the Legislative Committee meeting minutes of March 5th, 2024. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? If not, may I have a motion, please, that Council approve the minutes of the March 5th, 2024 Legislative Committee meeting as presented? Councillor Hall, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We also have before us the regular meeting minutes of March 5th, 2024. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Seeing nothing, might I have a councillor please make a motion that Council approve the minutes of the March 5th, 2024 regular council meeting as presented? Councillor Waxer, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And finally, we have before us the meeting minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of March 12th, 2024. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Again, seeing nothing, may I have a councillor please make a motion that Council approve the minutes of the March 12th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented? Thank you, Councillor Repti. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have no correspondence in the agenda today. I take it nothing has arrived late that should be brought to the attention of Council. Similarly, we have no scheduled delegations, and there is not a need to canvass the gallery to see if there are any potential delegations, as the gallery is empty. Which takes us to agenda item 6, new business. 6.1, Jasper Municipal Library Board insurance. That comes before us as a recommendation from Committee of the Whole from a week ago. Is there any need for administration to speak to the matter? Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion based on the recommendation from the committee? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I would make that recommendation that Council approve the Municipality of Jasper Library Board request to be an additional named insured under the Municipality of Jasper insurance policy.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Hall. Is there any debate on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We also have before us the rates and fees bylaw. But I think before we get to that, we have a proposal or at least an opportunity to consider an amendment. Mr. Kittle.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Council in first and second reading, when the bylaw was first here and before going to Parks for certification, request administration provide some language for council's consideration should you wish to make an amendment to the bylaw before third reading. There is a report that was presented to committee last week, I believe, that highlights how council could make an amendment to allow for use of the parking lane for less than 12 hours. There is in the attached report, language would be that council amend Schedule A of the rates and fees bylaw 2024 to include a fee of, and this would be up to council to decide the fee amount for the use of parking lane for less than 12 hours a day. So in terms of process, prior to making third reading, if council wishes to consider this issue, we would make a motion to amend the bylaw using language similar to that. And then following the resolution of any amendments, you would want a motion for third reading. Happy to answer any questions you may have around process or around the content. But again, this recommendation, this advice is really around language. Administration is not necessarily recommending this, but council did ask to have some advice in response to a resident business concern.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gibbon. I see your hand, Councillor Demoto, but just before I turn to you, Mr. Gibbon, can you confirm, please, that although it might be irregular, you anticipate no issue with Parks Canada if we amend a bylaw after it having received certification after second reading?
Your worship, I don't believe we would. This doesn't change the nature of the bylaw. It's simply just adding an additional fee category and doesn't change sort of the intended application of the bylaw or any of the other material issues.
Thank you for that. Councillor Demoto.
Thank you. I did my best to follow the committee of the whole meeting last week, and Director Nadal did a really good job of describing the situation. And I apologize for adding extra time to this conversation, but I just wanted to be a little bit more clear. We have a defined value of what a parking stall is worth now in the community, and that's for 12 hours of use in the commercial zone for paid parking. And I guess the question here is the request for the suggestion to change the rate for less than 12 hours a day for something that might be of somebody that might want to use it for partial use, or is it a business that's still operating from 9 to 9 during the day, but then not from 9 to 9 overnight? Because to me, I was just thinking that kind of answers itself there. And so if it's not going to be used in the hours that you're not judging for parking anyway, then what's the point of having changing that portion of the rates and fees? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demoto. Other comments? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the spirit of the request for us to review the fee in this particular case is for a business that operates during the time when the parking stalls are being charged for, as opposed to a time when they're not, and where sidewalk seating is in those stalls and couldn't be used anyway. So just for clarity, that the use of a parking lane for less than 12 hours a day would be during the time that the parking would be charged at the normal rates. I have a question for administration. Is it easier to work with a percentage discount? If we were to frame a amendment from the use of parking lane fee for that year, if we were to pass a amendment to that effect, would that be easy to administer?
Mayor Ireland, through the Deputy Mayor Melnick, thank you for the question. I think the basis behind our recommendation to keep it at a fixed rate would be, it would be administratively easier to administer, but also easier to enforce that way. There could be an opportunity to go percentage based, and then I suppose you would propose that it would be based on the hours of usage. Or how is that percentage applied, I guess would need to be detailed. And depending on the year over year fees, so what would you like to see in the future? Is this a fixed fee that carries on for future years, or would the percentage be modified? I guess it's possible in both instances, whether it's a fixed rate or a percentage. So I guess my answer is it would be possible. I would see it as a bit more administratively cumbersome to deliver that type of program, because it would change for every applicant depending on their hours of use. And then would people try to minimize their hours to try to minimize the cost? I mean, might be an opportunity for the businesses, but would be a bit of a challenge for us administratively. But yeah, I think Mr. Gibbon would like to chime in.
Your worship, I think there's, maybe we just need to clarify exactly what Councillor Melnick is asking. If we're talking about continuing the sort of description as proposed of use of parking lane less than 12 hours a day, not suggesting that it could be 5 or 2 or 7, but less than 12, and saying that the use of less than 12 hours a day is some percentage of the regular fee, and not having a variety of different fees. I think that that's what you're suggesting. So if council was thinking about that kind of language, the amendment motion that was put in the report could still work. The council amends Schedule A of the rates and fees bylaw to include a fee reduction of blank percentage for the use of parking lane for less than 12 hours a day. So in the table, rather than a dollar value, we would show a percentage reduction. And the in terms of administration, it wouldn't be, to be clear for the public, that wouldn't mean that you could choose to do 50% of 12 hours or 75% of 12 hours, and your fee would change. It would be a flat fee, but it would be a percentage of the $2,050, a reduction of that. So you could frame that as either a fee of 90% of the regular fee for use less than 12 hours a day, or 75%, or whatever percentage council would choose. So if that's what you were asking, I think that yes, that's possible. It would be a different scenario than Director Nadon described, and I think that would be relatively straightforward to administer.
Councillor DeBois?
Yeah, so there's two trains of thought here. So the other one is people that have boardwalks or are using, or sorry, businesses that are using boardwalks or are using sidewalk seating, or street seating for that matter, parking stall seating, will take up that whole or those stalls for 24 hours a day, and it's a permanent structure. For someone that might have a business that's only using it for a portion of the day, that use of public space is still worth something, and it's free at nighttime. So for either residents or other people to use when they're going into the commercial core. So that's part of the argument, right? So do we know what that is actually worth to the community? Because it is community space. And then the other portion is less than 12 hours a day. So are we basically, when we say that, focusing on the revenue generation portion of those 12 hours a day, or just 12 hours a day? You know what I mean? So I know there's some semantics in there, but it's worth contemplating if we're going to be going down this road semantically as well.
Councillor Hall?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. This came to us from a particular business that, if I can remember correctly, is going to use it for 3/4 of that time. Is that correct? So I would be comfortable with it, a reduction of 25%. And I do agree that probably the wording needs to change a little bit in those 12 hours, but that is a simple solution. But I think that, am I correct in thinking that? It's like 12 hours divided by 4 is 3, like 4 3-hour blocks. And this business isn't using it from 6 till 9, which will generate revenue into our paid parking system.
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Hall, I I do think the request and how you explained it does match. I think what administration is trying to not get in the business of is applying different rates for different hours of use. So your reasoning is valid in the current circumstance, but also that fee could apply to other businesses who might use the stall for different amounts of time.
Councillor Keller-Harampy.
Thank you, Mayor. I want you to direction the bill on it. What I kind of heard last week was that what we decided this was for restaurant, it was for kind of retail businesses that were interested. Am I correct?
Sorry, I saw a nod, but go ahead and confirm for the record.
Yes, your worship. So I would say no, there wasn't a decision made about that. And these rates aren't specific to type of business. It is about how long is a commercial use going to occupy the space at the curb, whatever that commercial use is. And so, we're a bit agnostic about the type of business. We're not providing a preferential treatment to one type of business or the other. It's about how long is somebody renting our space, the public space on the street at the curb.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Well, just kind of dovetailing off what Councillor Hall said. If we have an opportunity to retrieve some revenue off the stalls after the period of time that the request did whatever particular business, XXX business, uses it, then I don't think we should be charging them and whomever's using the stall at the same time, because then we're double dipping. So I think if there is an opportunity there, maybe it's worth having this. But if that stall is not going to be used for the rest of the duration because of its specific designation, then I don't think that we should be giving any relief to the time that that stall is not being actively generating revenue. That's just my opinion.
From my perspective, Councillor Demody, you've hit upon, I think, an important distinction. There is value to a parking stall, whether it's within the paid parking period or not. There's public value to have parking. And so those businesses which could configure their business to use the parking lane for only a portion of the paid parking period, return it to the community for public use, both for a couple of hours of paid parking inventory, but for all of the hours when it can still be available at no cost for public use. And I would be inclined to incentivize that, because in fact, returning those stalls to public use, even when we don't charge for them, probably benefits the very people who take up public parking 24 hours a day. I did some rough math, and I don't purport to suggest this is indicative of anything, but those who use walkarounds or actually use the parking for, say, restaurant seating, patio seating, they remove that parking from our inventory, both the paid parking inventory and the public inventory, for about 180 days, for just over $1,800, about $10 a day. If somebody is using it for about 9 or 10 hours, 10 hours over the course of that 180 days amounts on a 24-hour day to about 75 days. So I would be inclined, I think I hear the 25% suggestion. That might even be high. There is a benefit to returning those stalls, even when we don't charge for them. We can get revenue potentially for those few hours when they're returned, but we get public benefit for all of the hours. So I'm inclined to either a percentage or an amount, but it's going to be based on a percent, but somewhere between 50 and 25% reduction, I think is not unfair, and I think we do want to incentivize other businesses, if they're able at all, to bring their business onto the public street. I think that animates the downtown. It creates an atmosphere that is good for all business. Appreciate not everybody agrees, but returning those stalls to the public fold in the evening time is also good. So I'm inclined to support whether it's a percentage amount or a dollar amount. But my starting point might be a 25% reduction, but I could certainly be persuaded to go above that in terms of the discount. Councillor Melnick and then Councillor, oh, that's right, Councillor Melnick and then Councillor Demoda.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was ready to make a motion, so maybe Councillor Demoda might want to speak first.
Thank you for that. Oh, if I may, Your Worship. Thank you. I guess you already said yes. I don't like making decisions based on arbitrary numbers. It just, is it 25? Is it 15? I'd like to have a little bit more math behind it instead of just throwing a number out there. And I guess we could quickly do that, but we don't know. Do we know for sure that particular business or businesses will be? So what if somebody want to use it for 4 hours a day? Do they get the 25% discount, or is it a 50% discount? That kind of thing. So we have a hard set number. Sure, you get a 25% discount, that's fine, but what's that based on? I get that, but again, 6 hours a day, 12, like if you're using it for 9, for 8, 4.
Less than 12.
Okay.
Councillor Waxer and then Councillor Hall.
Sorry, I just had a quick question. I was curious if people, if any of the businesses can use that spot on a short-term basis. That's if we have rates for that as well. Like let's say the blowout summer sale, if it would be for one weekend only, or I'm just curious about the whole package.
Mayor Ireland, through the Councillor Waxer, that type of use would be contemplated in the commercial use of public space bylaw, generally speaking, so someone could apply for a permit, and then the fees that are described in the bylaw, so if you have the report in front of you, the information report that is immediately before the bylaw, the CAO has pretty broad authority to authorize there'd be a permit fee, and then there's a use fee. So between $50 and $400 is the sliding scale of a fee that administration would be able to impose on such a use. So it is a little bit different than the sort of more permanent summer usage that we're seeing. And just from our experience, we did have a retail extension program, and we found that retailers don't tend to avail themselves of that opportunity for a number of reasons, but one being that their inventory being outdoors could get damaged or sun faded or dusty is another one. And also theft is another consideration. So we've tried for, and it would still be possible if someone applied, we would likely approve a retail extension type permit, but it's just not really a service or an opportunity that businesses appear to be seeking.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Just think about this, when we had our mountain bike store, I would have loved to have rentals out front for a few hours a day. But my question to admin, because we don't have to be specific with the hours a day, could it be a discount of up to 50%? Does it have to be set?
Just going back to the conversation from committee, I think Director Nadon reported the administration's general concern about having to monitor a business's actual use. If we have a variety of amounts of time, then there would be that administrative cost associated with having to go and check to make sure that the business is complying with the time that they set and so on. So I think that that's where we landed at the idea of anything less than 12 hours a day. Use it for 15 minutes one morning, you pay this fee. Use it for 11 3/4 hours, you pay the same fee, which would avoid that sort of added administrative overhead of having to go and check on a day in, day out basis. The next thing that I could imagine say, somebody saying, well, I only want to do it Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays between these hours, but Saturdays and Sundays I want to do it between these other hours. And so you can start to see how the more that we try to tailor it to every possible use scenario, it starts to become pretty complex. And that's where, again, I think the committee discussion left off when it was here previously, at saying, okay, well, anything less than 12 hours.
Deputy Mayor Melnick, are you still ready with a motion?
I am, your worship. Unless there's any other information that needs to come forward. Your worship.
Go ahead, Ms. Dunn.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick. I just wanted to point out, I'd be remiss if I didn't. So there's wording in the report that suggests, you know, council could insert a dollar amount or percentage or however you wish to go about it. But the way we are proposing to capture those edits in the bylaw itself are in the table on the following page. And so it also sort of goes back to Councillor Keller-Ampe's question, where currently it says use of parking lane 2024, use of parking lane 2025 and beyond. By adding this fee, that would be less than 12 hours a day, we did add sidewalk seating in front of use of parking lane 2024, use of parking lane 2025. And that is how we're proposing to document the edits in the bylaw. So the motion is one thing, but I want to make sure that everyone understands what the proposal is. And if that is not satisfactory, or you'd like to see different wording, that it's understood there. And so the addition of the word sidewalk seating on those two rows suggests that the fee for less than 12 hours a day could not apply to a sidewalk seating installation. And the rationale here is the public safety aspect of those more than temporary installations. If someone was to propose that they would remove their boardwalk or remove their patio to get the discounted fee, I don't think that would happen because the amount of work would be way more than the savings. But just so everyone is clear on the proposal, that's what we're proposing to put in the bylaw, but it could change. But it's sort of a two-part thing. The motion is one thing, but the description of the actual changes in the bylaw is another.
Oh. Well, Deputy Mayor Melnick was about to make a motion, but he might be prepared to defer. You have another comment before he makes that motion?
Well, you know what, I like having debate for when it's suitable, and I appreciate the fact that you let us kind of still spitball at this. And one thing that stood out to me was looking at the schedule, and it says work performed by the municipality costs plus 5%. That means like sometimes they have to go with their foot cones, do traffic and all that other stuff, but they also have to now go and monitor whether they are complying on removing your equipment or not, and that's added work. What's that worth? These are things that I'm just throwing out there because of arbitrary numbers, that's all. I like to have math.
Thank you for that. I will return to you, Deputy Mayor Melnick.
Thank you, your worship, and I appreciate everyone's conversation in this particular item, and we are trying to accommodate, or we're accommodating a request. And in keeping with the administration's use of clarity, what I'm proposing is I'd like to make a motion that the fee for the use of a parking lane for less than 12 hours a day, that would be a 25% discount of the annual sidewalk seating space fee, which is referenced above, the use of parking lane for less than 12 hours per day. So we're tying the discount to the actual fees of sidewalk seating, but the use of the parking lane, it's a temporary use. In other words, you can only use it for that period up to or less than 12 hours a day. No permanent installation in there. And I think that's what we're trying to capture is the recognition that the parking fee would be returned back to the municipality. So again, the actual wording, a 25% discount of the annual sidewalk seating space fee for the use of public parking for less than 12 hours per day.
Thank you for that motion, Deputy Mayor Melnick. And if I understand correctly, then that it would be a 25% reduction for both the 2024 sidewalk seating use of parking lane and 2025. Thank you for that. Debate on the motion, Councillor Demota.
I definitely support the idea and I like the idea. I think it's worth having the discussion over. I don't support the methodology of coming up with a number, that's all. So, and I do support what that business is trying to do and is doing in the community, what they provide. And, you know, just thinking of businesses as a whole and other opportunities. I don't want to make this longer than it actually is, but I think that there's some better math to this, but I'm willing to go along with it. Maybe not for 2 years, but I'm not going to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. Any other debate on the motion? Right, if not, I will support the motion. It produces an odd number of my math, 1387.50. I might have rounded that down to 1350 if we were using a dollar amount, which is a $500 discount, which in real terms, perhaps for an annual fee, not that much, but it does show appreciation for the motion or the request that has come forward from the individual and may set the stage for others to take advantage and get other businesses engaged in using the public space. So although I might have supported something greater, I am prepared to support the 25% reduction proposed by Deputy Mayor Melnick in his motion. Any other debate? Councillor Melnick or Deputy Mayor Melnick, do you wish to pose?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate the time we spent on this and ready to vote.
I will then call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? There are none opposed. That is carried.
I have a question, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering if any of the council members have got to read that link that I sent out about bicycle use in urban areas. I just found it interesting on, you know, how much of the study came back to, you know, indicate that traffic sometimes or parking stalls in front of businesses don't really affect your business as much, depending on what it is, as much as people think. So I think I'm going to post that publicly just so other people have to look at it. A former resident sent that to me, and I found this study, although done mostly in urban areas, quite interesting, like with the information that came forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Demota, it was indeed an interesting read. We are not yet done with sidewalk seating and the rates and fee bylaw. So we just passed a motion to amend the schedule that's attached to the bylaw. And I would then look for a motion that council read for the third time bylaw number 260, being a bylaw of the specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta to provide for the adoption of rates and fees as amended. Councillor Demota.
Yeah, even though I don't support the amendment, I support the third reading. So I'm ready to move forward with that. I'll move it.
Thank you for that. Is there any debate? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed, so that gives third reading to the bylaw. For the record, Councillor Demota, you did support the amendment as I recorded.
I voted for it.
Yes, sir.
Well, I didn't mean to. I said I wasn't going to, and I just kind of defaulted. I guess you're, well, that's embarrassing, actually.
I did record it.
I guess it's too late to go back now, but, sorry, Jasper, I really didn't mean to do that. Anyway, I guess people understood where I was going, and, yeah, I guess, it's probably your voice and me being used to it, I don't know.
I was taking credit for having persuaded you, but all I did
Yeah.
was confuse you.
You did. I was confused there. Oh.
All right, that takes us to agenda item 6.3. Public statements policy F112. Again, coming to us by way of recommendation from committee of the whole. So that was discussed, well, both at legislative committee and at committee of the whole. Are there any questions of councillors or administration arising? If not, is there a councillor prepared to make a motion to approve policy F112 as presented and to rescind policy F011 non-standard crosswalks and policy F012 proclamations, letters of support and flag raising policy? Councillor Waxer wins that battle.
Yes, I'm happy to make that motion, and I was going to read them, but given that you already have, I'll leave it.
All right, thank you. Do you wish to speak to the motion at all?
No, I'm very happy with this progress in this area.
Thank you for that. Debate, Councillor DeMota.
Yeah, I'm just very grateful for the process and, like a lot of gratitude to, Director Nadon, Mr. Gibbon on, helping develop this and Emma. Like, all the work that went behind this, I really appreciate that, and I was happy with the process and how it came back to council, and I think we have a better document or better documents because of this. So fully in support of that, and it's not me giving me any credit on, I didn't do a lot of the work on this because it was a lot of insight and wordsmithing, and the insight might be a little bit in my wheelhouse, but the wordsmithing wasn't. I'm just grateful to how it came to this. Thank you.
Thank you. If there is no other debate, I will call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. There are none opposed. That takes us to agenda item 6.4, Skatepark interim financing. Again, a recommendation coming forward from committee of the whole as we potentially near the end of this long process to have a skate park in the community. Are there firstly any remaining questions for administration? Councillor Moda.
Well, I'm very sorry. I'm very active today, and maybe it's just because I haven't been here in a while, and I don't mean to be disputative on every item. I'm just wondering through you, your worship, to administration, if any contemplation or discussion revolved around backing a loan as opposed to financing a loan. Precedent was set when we did Caribou Creek. They went out and got the loan and we backed it. And I think that kind of not really took us off the hook, but it didn't really saddle us with, you know, what this could potentially saddle us with down the road. And I do have a lot of confidence in this group and Daryl. But I'm just asking the necessary questions because we do get questioned on our debt limits and, you know, the effect on that. Thank you.
Mr. Gibbon.
Thanks, Your Worship. So administration does have a brief report that's attached. The recommendation is that we, in essence, self-finance. The reason that administration is recommending that is because we do have flexible reserve funds. We would be more in control of the interest rate that we could choose to charge to the organization. And so we would have more choice available to us there. Additionally, the loan, even if it were a short-term loan for a period of 5 years or 2 years or whatever, wouldn't count against the municipality's debt capacity. So this is a way of using our reserves that we have to meet a community need and provide some flexibility. So really using the financial capacity of the municipality through our savings and being able to pass that on to this community project while ensuring that we are able to establish terms for the loan that are in the advantage of the taxpayer and supportive of the organization. So we have more flexibility, and this loan amount wouldn't count against the municipality's debt capacity because we would be directly self-financing.
In the absence of hands indicating other questions, I have a couple of questions. Mr. Given. Firstly, with respect to potential security and enforceability of a loan, as was discussed at committee level, the asset will become ours in any event, so can't we take security on our own asset? I presume there is no other security proposed for this loan. In terms of enforceability, who exactly is the borrower? Is the Skatepark committee a legal entity? I understood that we were, as a municipality, were holding some funds for them because they were challenged in that respect. So who is the borrower intended to be?
Your Worship, my understanding would be the Skatepark committee. I don't know their legal status at this time. And you're correct in saying that the $1 million asset essentially is going to be transferred to the municipality at the conclusion of construction. So there isn't a physical asset to be able to hold as security. I think it needs to be acknowledged that this is a community organization that likely doesn't have a lot of other reserves or assets that they might be able to borrow against. And that's why they would be seeking the municipality essentially as a lender of last resort, or maybe a lender of community resort, because as the municipality, we have an interest in seeing the project completed. And we are able to provide more flexibility to the group, to the organization than traditional borrowing organizations would be able to, lending organizations would be able to. But I think it's fair to acknowledge that lending to a not-for-profit comes with different risks because there is likely no collateral that the municipality will be able to take in place. So I think it is fair to say that council's judgment about whether you wish to do this or not really relies on your level of confidence in the individuals, their track record, and their commitment to the project and their commitment to seeing through the finalization of the fundraising. That is, I think it's fair and reasonable to acknowledge that that's a judgment call. And that's why council is being presented with this option. It is purely an option. Council could choose not to provide the interim financing, to direct administration to work with the organization to secure private financing from some other entity or private lender. This is the most expedient and clear-cut way to provide the financing that allows the municipality to provide, again, that flexibility in terms of crafting the lending terms that you think are appropriate. But it does come with some risk because this is not as though you're giving somebody a mortgage. We're going to own the house already anyways in the end of the construction project. So it's not as though we can suggest that we would take the house back if the mortgage isn't paid. I mean, that's a bit of a simplistic view, but I think it's fair and accurate. I think it's important the council is aware of that risk. The community acknowledges that. And then the council decides whether you wish to support the project and giving it the confidence to go forward with construction, knowing that they will have the funds, at the end to be able to continue on. The alternative would be that the organization postpones the startup of construction until they secure their total expected financing, or that the organization reduces the scope of the project to reduce the scope to fit in within their available funds. So, there are options that are available. There are pros and cons to each option. And administration's advice here is simply that if council wishes to provide that financial backing, an appropriate method would be through self-financing, because we have those funds in reserves, and it would give us that flexibility. But other options are absolutely available to council, should you not feel comfortable with this one.
Thank you for that. Other questions? Deputy Mayor Melnick?
Thank you, Your Worship. With the funds that have been raised already, and our support not to exceed $150,000, the project should be able to go ahead and is going ahead. And I imagine that any of the grants or previous fundraising amounts would all be spent prior to and applied towards a project before any additional or any portion of that 150,000 would be drawn upon. The 300,000 we committed to, that'll be going into the construction costs as part of having the construction company confident to be able to move forward. And so really it's a matter of this may be financing that may only be needed 2 or 3 months from now and may be reduced by some additional fundraising.
If I may then, again, Mr. Given, just returning to the question of the legal entity that will sign the loan agreement. I am concerned that if we do this at all, it is with a recognized legal entity other than Mr. Savage. I wouldn't want him to be personally liable for this in the event that the fundraising is not secured, and I'm not entirely comfortable that there is a legal entity at the other end of this. And so I'm interested in whether administration would see a challenge if we were at this table to authorize in principle this interim financing while those details are worked out. Because even though we might forgive the debt, I think the stress that it would cause for an individual who has worked so hard to get something for the community, to then also potentially have this debt hanging over his head is, well, it's not a way I would like to go. I prefer that we're dealing with a recognized entity of some sort and recognizing that a nonprofit is, we're not going to collect from them if they don't do the fundraising. But I would like more certainty before we commit finally, but I can certainly see myself being prepared to agree in principle, but give both Mr. Savage and the municipality time to work out some details. Is that workable from your perspective?
Your Worship, I think that that's really the nature of the recommendation. The council authorized interim financing not to exceed $150,000 with loan details to be presented to council following completion of the skate park. So, the intention here is, and the real question I think asked by Mr. Savage and the committee in their correspondence to council is, can we start construction now? Do we have the certainty that can say, yes, go ahead, start construction because this backing will be there if necessary? Again, and it is if necessary, they're committed to continue their fundraising efforts. And my experience has been that once a project starts rolling, that's where you can start to see more fundraising support come in, because there's actually something tangible happening. But the intention of the recommendation is that really this is support in principle. I mean, in the end, council will see all the details such as the loan term, the interest rate, the entity that the loan would be with. All of those things would come forward to council for final approval at the completion of the project. So we could say how much was needed, how long are we loaning for, who are we loaning to, what legal entity specifically, and how much interest are we expecting. So all those details are intended to be presented I think you've raised another detail that we can make sure that we check off of this before we come back to council with the final recommendation.
Thank you for that. Councillor Waxer?
Those are very important questions, and one comment I would make, having been a volunteer with that organization, my understanding is they are in fact a registered not-for-profit society in Alberta. However, some of the donations have required a tax receipt, which a registered not-for-profit society is not eligible to provide, but municipalities are. And so my understanding is, in the event donors have required a tax receipt, it has gone through the municipality. I'm very confident that they do have a registered not-for-profit status, because that would have been a requirement for many of the grants that they applied for.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I do have confirmation of that, and they do not have a GST number. But I don't know if that makes them legal or not, but under the Alberta Act, they are a society.
Councillor Waxer?
It's not this much the GST number as a charitable status number, and I think that's what they don't.
CST, CSN.
Councillor Demota?
I fully support this. I remember the committee. My earliest recollection, I guess, was a meeting in the spring of 2016 when I was about to go off to Winnipeg to see what New Line had done there, and very excited. People have heard me say that already, and we have to get a shovel in the ground. Let's get this thing going. I'm not a big fan of doing this because I think it might take a little wind out of the sails on potential donors with this, but it's been a long time, so we need to help these people along and put some pressure on other people in the community or outside the community to fill up the remainder of that bucket. The town needs it, and you know, the three filters, Councillor, is it good for the community as a whole? What are the costs, and is it the right thing to do? I think it checks most of the boxes under those, and I'm willing to support motion going forward with this.
Well, if we had a motion,
I'll do it.
perfect.
I move the council authorize interim financing to the Jasper Skatepark Committee not to exceed $150,000, with loan details to be presented to council following completion of the skate park construction.
Just speaking to the motion. I'm persuaded based on comments from CEO Given that it is in principle. But I still don't read that in the motion. It authorizes, and it does say loan details to be presented following completion. But that could be loan details of a loan that has already been signed off because we've authorized it. So I would still prefer to say authorize in principle interim funding so that they can proceed, come back with the deal that they propose, and we can, I would think it's still something for us to authorize, but we've agreed that administration should proceed. I'm not sure I can comfortably read the motion as saying
Are we gonna have to vote on the friendly amendment now?
to be acceptable.
Okay, I accept that council authorize in principle an interim financing for the Jasper Skate Park Committee not to exceed $150,000 with loan details to be presented to council following completion of the skate park construction.
Thank you for that. Thank you for acceding to that request. Any debate on question? On motion, Councillor Demota?
Well, I just want to say that I am apprehensive about this, just because there's a lot of spending in the public Right now, public's a few of us, and the timing is just bad. But at the same time, the timing's been bad for this group since day one. And COVID and everything in the middle of it. Yeah, I think we just have to move forward on it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. There is no other debate. I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Councillor or Deputy Mayor, no.
I'm just wondering what the chances are that all of us will be on skateboards on July 1st. If there's a tentative kind of construction schedule, I think that might be optimistic, but it definitely will be something that we should enjoy this summer, I would think.
I thought that you perhaps, we have a municipal council contingent in the Canada Day Parade and we go on skateboards.
Your worship, first, we already dealt with insurance in an earlier discussion. We may have to deal with that again if we're going to put council members on skateboards. I believe Director Gray had reported that it was actually a fairly lengthy construction period, so it would be towards the end of the summer that it would be available for use. But so no July 1st. It would be sort of well in the back half of the summer.
All right, that takes us to agenda item 6.5, establishment of new public EV charging stations. Again, coming forward by way of recommendation from committee of the whole. Any lingering questions from councillors to administration regarding the matter? Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion? Councillor DeMoy?
I'm not prepared to make a motion. I was just waiting for someone else to talk before me. Since our power outage during the Chettaman fire, I've had a bee in my bonnet about the public washroom over there. And when I was contemplating this, I wasn't really for having EV chargers over there. I'm not sure we have the need for more, but if ATCO says there's a demand for it, I've also been against originally having phase 3 rapid chargers because I want to keep people in the community as the tourism town. But history has made me understand that sometimes people just need to move along, especially in an emergency. So that brings me to this. I was thinking that if we have an opportunity, if we're going to be ripping up ground and having some roughed in infrastructure, I'm sure that maybe ATCO will probably consider having some sort of external emergency generation for those units, or at least we can try to promote that, because not only do people need gasoline during those issues, if you need to get out of town or you're passing through and you're stuck here, you need to move on. So this is why I'm like now in favor of a phase 3 charger. But I'm wondering with, I understand it's going to incur some costs to the municipality, but instead of be pushing to get a generator over there for the washrooms, is having a roughed in kind of plug and play version of what other businesses in the community have, where you can pull up a generator and plug it in to run those facilities. And I think as far as offering needed service during a crisis, washrooms are pretty important. So they're not able to operate during a power outage. And then the other thing too, because they're all auto flush, maybe we can have them hooked up if there's an opportunity, working with ATCO on putting them on the phase 1 emergency power up when the first stage of power goes on in the community. It's just something that I observed. People were stressed out, and I think it's something we should address. And if there's a simple fix to it with reasonable cost, I think we should at least pursue that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Demoda. The ATCO proposal was on our agenda a week. It's not on today's agenda. I haven't flipped back, but Mr. Gibbon, can you recall whether did they talk about backup generating capacity for the EV chargers?
Thanks, Your Worship. So the proposal, I think this discussion comes up today because we do have Agenda item 6.5, establishment of new public EV charging stations. I think that's where Councillor Demote is bringing this up from. It is proposed. It is proposed in the parking lot adjacent to the Connaught Public Washrooms. It is not physically that close, and so I don't know that there's a direct linkage between any installation that they would do here. In fact, I think that location was chosen by ACPA because of its close proximity to the underlying sort of backbone infrastructure that they would need. That said, I understand the concern that Councillor Demote is raising about, if there's no power to the Connaught Public Washrooms, we do need to close them, and we experienced that in the past. I think, referring that item to administration for follow-up is a reasonable thing to do. There probably are simpler, there's probably a range of solutions that are available that would be anywhere from replacing electric flush toilets with manual flush toilets, levers, to same for faucets. And so those types of costs would have to be compared with the cost of changing the electrical system to allow for ongoing electricity in the case of emergency. There's sort of two different alternatives there. The principle of we need to ensure that that public amenity is as available as possible with as much uptime as possible. I think where Councillor Demote is coming from, administration certainly appreciates that and would be happy to look at options and come back to council with a recommendation.
Before you take that away, a suggestion by Councillor Demote, take it, Councillor Demote, you would be content with that resolution. Administration takes that away and comes back to council.
Yeah, I think we have to formally form a motion and direct administration to do that.
If we want it on the motion action list.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So
So I'm not,
on our agenda, but if we want to make the motion in the circumstances, we can waive those provisions of bylaw that might stand in the way and make the motion to get it on the motion action list.
so I'm willing to do that at a different time. I just thought if we had an opportunity to work with ATCO, if there's going to be some, in-ground work and they're going to build in some capacity, even though it's not in the presentation, you don't know until you ask. So that's all I was saying. Then we can work on the other thing later.
All right, thank you. That takes us back then to the recommendation that is before us. That is to approve the participation in the e-venture charging network and approve the establishment of 4 new electric vehicle charging stations in the off-street parking lot adjacent to the public washrooms on Connaught Drive through a license of occupation for a term of up to 14 years. Is Councillor prepared to make that motion? Councillor Keller-Grampy, thank you. Debate on the motion. I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us through the new business portion of the agenda. There are no notices of motion, so we can dispense with agenda item 7. Councillor reports. Deputy Mayor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Probably the most significant item to report is last Thursday and Friday, I was in Edmonton for the Spring Municipal Leaders Caucus, at which point at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday, we presented the member request for decision, which we passed here in the meeting a few months ago, was that we would advocate that the Alberta municipalities advocate for the Alberta government to establish capital grant program to support the creation of new physical spaces for licensed daycare, and that the capital grant program be focused on supporting nonprofit and municipally operated daycare facilities. This is something that is not just a rural problem, but is also a urban problem. It goes right across the province. And as such, in the room of over, at the time was probably around 225, 230 leaders from around the province, we garnered a 73% support for that particular requested a decision, and now that goes to Alberta municipalities to consider for the fall convention. The other thing I'll mention is that with upcoming events, there's a couple more training sessions this week for me for Community Futures West Yellowhead, as well as we have our monthly meeting on Thursday via Zoom. And so it'll be a busy week for the next few days.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor Melnick, other reports? Councillor Keller-Renfrey?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Last Friday, I attended a full day board meeting at Hinton for the Evergreen Foundation. We passed our budget, so our requisition for 2024 for the entire region will be $5,433,546, which will increase an increase of about 52,000 to Jasper for the levy. And that notification will be coming from Evergreen administration to finance.
Thank you for that.
I was gonna ask if that included any generators.
Well, I'll give you some good news on the generator. We did, Evergreen has got some funding, so we will be covering the costs of all the engineering installation. So to get the new generator, it'll be about 110,000. Evergreen will be picking up the cost of everything else. We're nearly at our 25% of that, and once we raise the 25%, we will be able to order the generator. It will take 6 months to get here. In the meantime, Evergreen has secured a generator that should we have any problems with power outages in the summer, that will be brought in to maintain Alpine Summit. We will be having some major fundraisers coming up here in the near future, and I will keep you all updated. And I had a lovely day on St. Patrick's Day. I attended the celebrations with our seniors, and a good time was had by all.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hall?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I attended a library board meeting last Tuesday night. There's lots going on and lots of programming happening upstairs. Director of Libraries managed to, probably she's so amazing, but they've had long-term staff for a good few years now, so things are really quite smooth up there. Councillor Keller, I saw pictures of your celebration on St. Patrick's Day. It looked like lots of fun. Upcoming events for myself, I will be attending a Community Futures West Yellowhead board meeting with Councillor Melnick. Friday morning, we have, I think there'll be a few of us at council equity training first thing in the morning. And then Friday evening, I have a library board subcommittee, land acknowledgement subcommittee meeting.
Thank you for that. Councillor Waxer?
Yes, last week I attended the Hacconi committee, as well as the community conversation for children and youth, and which was well attended and lively conversation.
Thank you for that. I will go back a little bit. March 8th, I attended the Francophone flag raising, the Alberta Francophone flag raising at the school, and spoke at that. That same day, Deputy Mayor Melnick and Councillor Waxer and I met with the MLA for Banff Kananaskis, who happened to be in town for a different conference. We had a discussion about Jasper's needs and initiatives with respect to matters of provincial concern. And I can tell you, if I can find it, I received an invitation today from the MLA for Banff Kananaskis, who will be presenting a motion to the Legislative Assembly of Alberta on April 8th, and has invited the mayors of Banff and Canmore, myself, and the mayors of Sylvan Lake and Drumheller to be in the Legislative Assembly for the presentation and the debate on the motion. It is already listed on whatever documentation the province has to let people know what's coming, so I'm not revealing any secrets. The The motion as proposed is follows, be it resolved that the Legislative Assembly, A, recognize the importance of tourism on Alberta's economy and the need to balance visitor experiences and resident affordability. And B, urge the government to work with municipalities in Alberta's Rocky Mountains with tourism-based economies to establish funding and support programs that ensure municipal taxpayers do not bear the financial responsibility for the additional infrastructure requirements and operational demands on those municipalities due to tourism. So that is a motion that will be presented on April 8th at the Legislative Assembly. So I'd like to think that much of that potentially came from the discussion that we had with that MLA a couple of weeks ago. Whether I actually make it into hear the motion and the debate is undetermined. Also in my report, I had an opportunity, I believe it was Wednesday of last week, whatever that was, about the 14th, to meet with the CEO of AMPI and some of the board members from AMPI, the Jasper board members, and our MP, Mr. Soroka. We spoke primarily about the status of Highway 3, the Icefields Parkway, and what he might be able to do to assist in efforts to manage that roadway in a manner that works a little better for our business sector. But otherwise, a good opportunity to touch base with our MP. And I think that is the extent of, oh, and I met briefly this morning with Alicia Fox, who is with the Rural Health Professional Action Plan. And so they work with Alberta Health Services in respect to recruitment, attraction, and retention of healthcare professionals. And she was simply interested in what might be done in Jasper to assist with any of our needs. So based on information from the seniors community conversation, it was clear to me that mental health needs are perhaps not being fully addressed here. There are gaps, and so I mentioned that with her. We spoke about housing, and I will have Mr. Gibbon perhaps send her the information that's available with respect to parcel GC in our plans. It's possible that as an institution, they would be interested in taking advantage of an opportunity to invest and create some housing, because they, like everybody in town, struggles with accommodation. And she provided me some information about potential grant funding to support training, which may be of interest and need for both our crisis team and the fire department. So I will pass that information on. And those are my reports. Councillor Waxer.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that last week I also participated in the Provincial Forum for Women in Local Government, and hosted by Tracy, who we've worked with in the past. It was an excellent session, and I was pleased to see there was some participation from our own municipal staffs. That was good.
Thank you for that. If there are no other reports, upcoming events, equity training on March 22nd in this room, beginning at 8:30. There is NETMA tomorrow already at the Art Gallery. And we, the municipality, are hosting a community dinner on Sunday, which will be the last community dinner of the season, I understand. And the annual Jasper Pride and Ski Festival begins April 12th, so less than a month away. Are there any other upcoming items not on the list of which council ought to be made aware of? Deputy Mayor Melnick.
April 17th is going to be a busy day. There will be a chamber meeting at the Jasper Legion at noon. And I believe our fire chief, Matt Conte, will be speaking. As well, there is another NEPMA, believe it or not. And that'll be held at Papa George's, and that is during Pride Week on the 17th as well. So expect a lot of activity on that day.
Thank you for that, Councillor Melnick. If there are no other items, oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Demore.
Well, just want to let you know that I'm very appreciative of some of the advancement that's been made for, you know, our municipal status as a tourism-based economy within the province, and I'm just very happy to actually see that on the floor. So I'll talk to you after on the principle and maybe just how that motion's worded and your comfortability on that, but I'm very grateful to see that there, and I'm interested to see the outcome, so thank you for getting that forward.
The next item we have is an in-camera item. Before I call for a motion to move in camera, I am anticipating that there will be nothing arising from these in-camera discussions that will necessitate a decision back in the public realm. Is that a fair assumption with respect to all three of the matters that are now listed under agenda item 10? I'm seeing general nods. So we will move in camera shortly. When we reconvene in open session, it will be for the purposes of adjournment only. So I thank all of those who have been watching online, and will release you to the remains of the day. It's still fairly nice out there, so go enjoy what's left of the afternoon. Thank you for attending, and I would invite a motion from a councillor that council move in camera at 2:47 p.m. Councillor Hall, thank you for that. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried, and we will take a recess and reconvene momentarily in camera.